Today's episode of the Mind Sculptors podcast is sponsored by TCG Player, your source for all your trading card game needs. Use our link in the description the next time you get your cards to help support the show. Today's episode is also made possible by our Patreon subscribers. If you want to support the show directly, head over to patreon.com/the Mind Sculptors and you can become part of the SCULPTY family today. Or if you don't want to do any of that, leave a like and comment on YouTube or a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts as an offering to Algorithm Jesus.
So Cal, I'm in this weird space where I'm so excited about so many commanders and brewing them, but I'm also not going to show up to a 64-player invitational with a brew. You know what I mean? Like, it's a weird space, you know?
Well, that's just because you don't have like the balls of a real champion.
Oh, that's true. I should consider having the balls of a real champion.
You need to have the, you know, I could fix this all and go with the heart of a champion, but I think what the reality of it is you just don't have the cojones of a real champion.
Yeah. And so I guess this is my shout out to you, the Mind Sculptors audience. Can you help me find the balls of a champion? And don't tell me after 10 seasons that the balls of a champion were in me the whole time. It's about finding the balls of a champion. It's a physical item that I have to search.
They're like Dragon Balls.
Yeah, they're like Dragon
Balls. We have to collect all of the Ian's balls of a champion. There's 5 of them, I believe.
Right. And as soon as I collect all the balls of a champion, I will then, I guess, summon a dragon and get a wish, I think is the plot of that show.
I think I got to be honest.
I've never watched Dragon Ball Z.
So when I watched Dragon Ball Z, I was too young to like.
Yeah, that's fair.
Fully
I did watch
ingest what was happening.
It was like a Toonami. I was between 8 and 10 years old. That's about my entire Dragon Ball thing. All I remember is I really liked the pink dude, and that's that was it.
Yeah. But you need to assemble the balls of a champion.
Yeah,
and it's like Exodia almost.
You're right. There is so many decks from where I am excited about though, and even some from Assassin's Creed that we didn't get to touch, and so like that part's cool. And now we're gonna stop talking about super exciting decks and talk about the stuff that's been doing well this past month.
Insert music here.
Dun. No.
Welcome everybody to the Mind Sculptors. I am Cal.
And I am Ian.
We are back with another episode of your monthly power rankings. And it was an interesting month. The stats were interesting to say the least.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I don't want to, do too much of a monologue here. So let's just get right in it. Ian, do you have any honorable mentions for this month?
Yeah. It was a weird month looking at the numbers. But Niv Mizzet had a weirdly good month.
It did.
13 performances overall, but like a 30% win rate from the deck. With 4 folks making top 16, one folk making it to the top 4. But as I mentioned, like the win percentage of the deck overall was up to a 30% win rate for the month. As I said, not a super amount of representations, maybe, from the deck in general, but like, 65 games played, winning a solid 30% for my little dragon friend. That's pretty good numbers.
Yeah, not bad. I don't have an honorable mention this month.
Yeah.
Some
decks on my top 10 feel like honorable mentions.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. Let's dive into that a little bit, Cal.
Yeah.
And I think we can like talk about this. This month is going to feel weird, I think, because there are our top 4 decks are taking up so much of the share of winning that it's like kind of ludicrous, right?
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, like I was talking about this in in the Ohio Discord channel, cEDH Discord channel yesterday. We're recording this here on Wednesday, but I was talking about this where, you know, we had 19 tournaments that, you know, met the criteria to be on our, you know, little survey we do. And of those, 15 of them were won by 4 decks. So, you know, it's just a huge consolidation at the top of the meta. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what makes July a little weird, because you're gonna the numbers seem to indicate you know, the top end is getting really, really, really good and the rest is doing fine. You know, nothing too exciting to stare at from the rest of the pack. So
and I don't think the numbers for July are in my opinion, they don't feel like they are the best representation of the format at the current moment. No. Like I feel like they feel very skewed to me. I think the fact that the Fishbowl in general, I mean, how many decks were registered for the month? So okay, yeah, there's 1,000 basically like decks registered. Wait, no, that was not the right one. What's the category for how many people like played?
Tournament entries would be
TE. Okay, here you go. Tournament entries. There you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there's 984 tournament entries for the entire month, right? In 50 plus person events, right? And so like a fifth of that being one tournament and almost another fifth being another tournament, right? And then sort of really trickling down from that point makes me like feel like those numbers are definitely a little bit skewed, right? And we'll talk about some of the stuff from Fishbowl in particular, because you know, that is a major West Coast tournament that's numbers definitely showed here, and you can see that with the representations of the winning decks and stuff like that. And so like there's definitely some funkiness with this month for sure, but definitely these 4 decks really ate up a majority of the wins for the month. And right. I know, Cal, you're a little more doom and gloom about this than maybe I am, but
I don't love what this signals
sure.
long term. Yeah. I don't think we're in like a disaster. Are you fucking drinking a beer at 12:30 on a Wednesday?
Well, first of all, it's a polar seltzer. Okay. Second of all, you as my friend should know I literally can't even drink beer.
Oh, well, yeah. That's why I was confused. I was like, Ian, do we need to have an intervention?
No, there's a seltzer and a Celsius. So no, the 2 things I'm drinking, and one of them just spilled. So we're going to take a 2-minute intermission. I'm looking forward to seeing how you edit this. Yeah. Okay. Hi, I'm back. Wow. Okay. What a natural cut back in which I did not spill a drink all over myself. Anyways, Cal, what's my number 10? Good question, Cal.
Ian, what's your number 10 for the month of July?
You can tell I've been traveling a bunch because I have my whole ass closet just with all my cards open and shit. My number 10 for the month of July is Yuriko, the Tiger Shadow. Oh, I also forgot to say the month of July was the last month with that qualified people for the Top Deck Invitational. So that's kind of a fun fact about this month. But yes, I had Yuriko the Tiger Shadow. I don't put Yuriko on my list normally, but it had a really, really good month, which is not something I'm used to saying about this deck. 26 entries, 9 of them made top 16, which is insane for Yuriko. Like, not something this deck does ever. We had a tournament win and 2 top 4s. You know,
a couple people had a good run.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you have to see it to believe it, to be honest. It's kind of commonly a deck I'm like, well, no one does well with this. So that speaks for itself, and I guess some people did well with it. So Yuriko has somehow earned its spot at number 10 this month.
Good job, Yuriko pilots. Proud of you. My number 10 for this month is Najeela the Blade Blossom. Najeela saw a pretty decent bump in play this month from where it had been previously. I feel like its conversion overall was not the greatest, but I will say that its overall win percentage is sitting right around 26%, so slightly above average, which is not the worst. And it's just a deck that generally, I think that when you're in these meta games where you're, kind of unsure what the meta game is going to look like overall, Najeela is just kind of uniquely able to do well in a lot of different environments. And we will see how this continues to go. But I think Najeela is a deck that I like enough to put it this low on the on the top 10. So that's how I feel there. Ian, number 9. What do you have here at number 9?
I have Najeela.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just one of those decks that's like, it's not thriving, it's doing fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having trouble believing in Najeela as a commander in general, right? And that's kind of where it sort of ends with this deck. I think like it's doing fine. I just think if you're going 5-color turbo, there are other options available. There's not really much to say about the deck in general right now, apart from the fact that like it's not a bad 5-color option. It's just not exactly excelling. And if I'm sleeving up a 5-color deck, I want that 5-color deck to be excelling in the format.
Yeah. No, I totally get where you're coming from with that. That's not too far off where I feel with Najeela, but I still think it's a good enough option right now. And there's just like a lot of interesting movement in the meta game that makes me just go, Najeela has good enough stats, right? My number 9 here, this is moving down on my list for me, is Rograk Thrasios. Kind of had a month where it fell back a little bit. After having a good June, it kind of retracted a little bit. Had a good conversion percentage of top 16s, up at 29%. However, was unable to convert any of those into top 4s, which is, a huge downside in my opinion. So that is a bit of a reason why I keep it a little bit lower. I'm not super thrilled with it. And I think something that I think is interesting is I don't know how much ROG really adds to your overall game plan that other 2-color options don't give you. With Thrasios, I think is kind of my overall issue with the deck. But it is good enough, I guess. Like it does some, you're going to hear me say that a lot in these like back 6 where I'm just like, it's good enough, I suppose. And 29% conversion rate, still pretty good. I don't know that it is my favorite option, but I think that it is something that is excelling right now. And I can at least acknowledge where it is doing decently.
Yeah. And I feel that too. It's just like, it's, the thing with the ROG plan is definitely like you have to be using Rograk, right? So if the answer is like I just want those guaranteed fierce or the fierce SWAT and flare options, like that's fine. But I feel like for a whole thing in your command zone when you already have a 2-mana commander, like there's got to be a little more. And I think
you're giving up a color for like 3 cards, which I don't know is my favorite. And like at least 2 of them are still turned on pretty quickly by your other commander. So like that's kind of how I feel about that.
Yeah, and I think like the decks that utilize ROG best, the ones that use him for the ramp plan, right, with things like Earthcraft or Relic and stuff like that. And then also do the fierce SWAT thing. And then I think the biggest thing I've seen with this deck when I played against it is the pilots who seem to be struggling when they play this deck just like ramp into nothing a lot of the time, right? They'll have like a super impressive board state that just fizzles, right? Where I feel like some of the decks that have been doing better with this archetype are like, they just like explode a bunch of mana out and then convert that mana very efficiently,
Be interesting to see how this deck continues to grow. It has very clearly been something that has been a work in progress. over the past few months. And so we've seen it kind of have a lot of different iterations. And still think it's heading in a decent direction. But that's Rogthras here at number 9. Ian, what do you have here at number 8?
At number 8, I have the biggest surprise that you and I talked about before this episode, probably is high performer this month, Thrasios and Tymna.
Yeah. Thrasios Tymna had the best win percentage, like just general win percentage, and the best top 16 conversion percentage of any deck this month.
Yeah. Do you want to say that again, just so people really let that one marinate?
Yeah. So Thrasios Tymna had the best overall win percentage and also the best top 16 conversion percentage, which is not a thing that I'm used to saying.
Yeah. That's so weird to me, man.
It's very weird to me too.
So I think one of the things that is relevant is that it did win a event overseas, it seems, with what is, in my opinion, a really cool list. And I actually had seen this a little bit beforehand, but it's basically doing a lot of the stuff I was doing with Nadu Breakfast, but in the Thrasios Tymna shell. Which was one of the things I had been looking at, but then had been like, man, I really like Dockside though. But here we have Thrasios Tymna Breakfast doing pretty well and winning an entire tournament. I think the Landfall tournament. Let me see, what was the size of that event? Okay, so it was like 60 something people.
Okay, so a bit of a smaller mid.
Yeah, absolutely. But like definitely not bad by any means. And then, the numbers get like a little bit worse as you kind of like go down. Like the Bufftown Bullies event, someone top 16, the Commander and Coffee event, someone top 16. And then another one, I don't know which one this is. It just says August CEDH 5K tournament.
Wow. Very descriptive.
With tournament being misspelled. So
that's amazing. Actually,
it's tormenant.
Tormenant.
This very real big money CEDH tormenant.
Not trying to put that store owner on blast, but come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's also had like a couple like 20th place placements and stuff like that. I'm curious to see if these other lists that were doing well with it are also doing.
I know I've heard a lot of talk about this Nadu Breakfast Thras Tymna deck.
Well, one of them was just a breakfast list sans Nadu, which I think is kind of interesting. Maybe. Yeah, they're all breakfast lists. That's so weird, but a bunch of them are just not on
some
Nadu.
Have Nadu and some don't.
Weird. And then this other one is just a Nas Tymna Thrasios. What the fuck? Okay.
Interesting.
You know what? I don't understand.
If that's what tickles your fancy, I'm not gonna hate on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, Thras Tymna had a pretty solid month, which is, I feel like that is at least a decent indicator of like the format isn't just, completely screwed, right? Like I feel whenever Thrasios Tymna starts doing better, I'm like, okay.
Well, and let's go back to my previous conversation about like the fact that this is the last month to qualify for the Invitational, right?
Right.
People aren't taking risks this month.
Right.
They're not.
No, that's
the
very
people
true.
Who are showing up for these events are either people like me who are grinders who are going to play what they're going to play, right? Or they're people who are going, I need points really fucking bad, and I'm going to show up and I'm going to pull out a guaranteed consistent deck. Right now, it may mean that, at the end of the day, like this person is primarily like, if you look at some of the people in the Invitational, they have like some really weird decks as their like most played decks, right? But the decks that they showed up and made sure to, if I'm playing a big event, qualify for all that kind of stuff, right? They're playing a blue farm, they're playing a Rogside, they're playing some sort of high value, powerful deck,
Sisay, right?
Yeah, Sisay, not etc. Right? Like, and this is where a lot of these people are going to these like staple decks to say, hey, this is what I'm going to show up with to
Right.
do well in these events, right? And so it makes sense that at the point in which, you know, this is the last moment that people are just going to take things like Blue Farm and play them because, you know what, they can't really afford to mess around. They can't really afford to take risks.
Man, I gotta say, this Thrash Timna breakfast list that won that tournament is cool.
Yeah, no, I like that list.
This is my type of bullshit.
Yeah, no, for sure.
This is
like
built
it back
for me.
to the days when they talked about banning Thrasios.
Yeah, seriously. My number 8 for this month is unfortunately my boy Tivit. I have down here, moving down a couple spots. Tivit had another average Tivit month. And I think it just kind of feels like a bigger dip because of how well the top end did, right? So the top end being so consolidated, so good, I think kind of makes this look worse than what it really is, which is why I'm not, freaking out about it. I think, again, when you look at the overall win percentage, it's still hanging around 25, which is exactly where I would expect this deck to continue to be, to stay in my top 10. And so I kind of keep Tivit here. It underperformed as far as getting to top finishes go for like top 4s. But overall, I still feel pretty okay with the deck being here in the top 10. And again, like I said earlier, there was a lot of consolidation at the top of the format because of that being the last month of the, top deck invitational finals qualification month. So yeah, I can say words. But so because of that, I think Tivit just took a little bit of a hit. Tivit generally sits right here at this, 25% win rate. And as long as that stays right there, I don't see any reasons to kill the deck. I think it just kind of takes some people who love it to play it. And I have not been playing. So. But
I'm like falling out of love with that deck, to be honest. I think it's just like I have yet to be given a reason in a long time to play it. Is kind of where I'm at with it, which is sad. I don't like that. That's where I feel about Tivit, but sometimes it'd be like that.
It'd be like that sometimes, right? Yeah. And I get it. I also feel that way for sure. I think the only difference here is it's been my main deck for well over a year at this point. And so it's a deck that I feel very confident with. I feel very comfortable with. And I think generally speaking is still decently positioned. If you are a control player. So I have Tivit here at number 8. Number 7, Ian, what do you have here at number 7?
Another deck having Sans Red surprisingly good month is Atraxa. Putting really good numbers up, to be honest.
Very good
1 win, 3 top 4s, 5 top 16s with only 19 entries is like pretty good numbers for Atraxa.
Especially for a deck that has been down for quite a while.
Yeah, months and months of just like kind of just doing mid, right? Like just in the most definitively mid way possible. I'm literally looking at the numbers right now just to see if like anyone's doing anything new, but like I haven't heard about any. So this is actually another one of these, the second place player from the same tournament we just covered with the breakfast, Thrasios Timna also had this. So I'm just wondering if like this 60 player tournament is really just throwing off a lot of the numbers from things we were expecting.
Perhaps.
But this is also kind of like more so illustrating our point, right? Of just like there is like a bunch of folks who are trying to do new stuff as opposed to people, in the top deck circuit right now who are just trying to like play their go-to stable of decks and just do the thing, right? Like you can even see that with the representations of each decks. I mean, Timna Crom at 167 of the decks this month. 160.
It was 12% of the meta.
Yeah. Right.
Which is like that's huge.
Yeah. And I think that says quite a lot, right? And like if you add the 3 decks together, or the 4 decks together, pardon me, that we were talking about at the end of this episode, that is literally just a bit less than half.
Slightly less than half.
Yeah. So like, I don't know, you know, these decks are going to show up and do really well and all that stuff. But like, if people are, you know, 420 nice out of the 984 decks are the same 4 decks, then like, are we really that surprised when these decks are doing well? Right? Like, I don't know. It's interesting to me.
Yeah. I totally get it, and I agree with you. And it'll be interesting to see how stuff goes post you know, the invitational at the end of the month.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see.
Well, the funny part is like the numbers aren't going to be like the invitational is going to impact the numbers way less than the open. Right.
Yeah. The open, which I'm playing in.
Right.
The open is going to be the thing we might end up doing like a full breakdown on, because of the fact that like that is probably going to be a sometimes I do like individual tournament breakdown reports like I do for the month ones. That'll probably be one that I do like a full on report on. I did one for the Playing with Power Open at the beginning of the year too. So
yeah,
interesting to see how that metagame will work out. My number 7 for the month of July was Kenrith, moving down here a little bit for me. Kenrith had a pretty bad month. It was not a good month for King K. Rool. And, you know, really all I got to say is I think Kenrith has the history behind it to let me give it the benefit of the doubt when it has a bad month like this. I still, you know, knocking it down a couple spots here, but I think it has such a long history of being a solid deck, right? That I can ignore a month with some, you know, middling to poor results. And I think a lot of that too, again, you know, not to sound like a broken record, but again, there is the fact of the matter is that people who were trying to qualify for the open or the invitational at the end of the month were probably not taking Kenrith to these sorts of things. And, you know, despite it still being a good deck, and the leftovers of who was still playing Kenrith didn't do very well. So that is kind of my take on what's going on with Kenrith there, but I'm still keeping it here at number 7. Not a huge fan of how it looked, but overall, I think it's still, you know, I mean, you can only be so bad with 5 color deck, right?
Yeah.
Moving on up to number 6, Ian. What do you have here at number 6?
Yeah. Kenrith isn't on my list. I kept my list very true to the numbers this month.
Yeah.
And that, you know, may be a flaw in this analysis and talking about these things, but I think I really wanted to highlight like how weird this month felt. Right. Because it is really interesting to talk about. And as you said, moving forward, I'm excited to see what comes next. But number 6, I have Kinnan on here. While Kinnan is still in that like 20% ish win rate, right? It still had like a decent amount of conversions. It was one of the other few decks because literally 4 decks apart from our top 4 that we're going to talk about had wins. Only 4 other decks had a win.
Right.
Kinnan was one of them. So it's a deck I still believe in quite a lot. I did a whole video on my channel about how why I played Kinnan at a tournament and why I believe in the deck still. And there's a video that Mons did where he breaks down Kinnan's win percentage and why you hear a lot of pros saying Kinnan wins, even though, you know, its numbers are not accurately representing that. And literally the math supports like if you put it in the hands of someone who is statistically a good player, the deck has actually like an insane win percentage, right? So that's kind of like, you know, a little bit indicative there. I still think Kinnan's very strong. The floor on the deck is low. The ceiling on the deck's really high. Hence, it goes in the middle of our top 10. Yeah.
I think for me, it's just like the the 13% top 16 percentage is just really hard for me to ignore. Like it's just like that, and Kenrith had like a similar one. The big difference here being is Kennen had like 20-ish more entries, so it just feels a little bit more impactful there. But you know, I respect it. I get it. You know, I feel that way about Tivit, honestly. It's kind of how I feel. The way you are about Kennen is how I feel about Tivit, so I get it. My number 6, this is where I have Thrasios Tymna. You know, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but Thrasios Tymna had a wild fucking month. 33% win percentage, 39% top 16 conversion percentage, which is real good. So, you know, I don't know how else to break it down for you other than Thrasios Tymna had a good month. It seems that this new breakfast build, which is really a return to older versions of Thrasios Tymna, quite honestly. You know, this is very like, you know, pre-Hulk unbanning Thrasios Tymna, which is wild. But, you know, it is, you know, very much in the same vein that like Tymna Crom, you have 2 value engines in the command zone that are just generically good. Thrasios Tymna, very similar in that regard, where you have 2 generically good value engines in the command zone. Your deck can only be so bad. So Thrasios Tymna, great month, and I'm putting it up here at number 6. Moving into our top 5, Ian, what do you have here at number 5?
Number 5, I have Magda. Had a solid month. I think about a 26% conversion rate, 27. Yeah. So a lot of top 16s this month, not a lot of top 4s and wins. I still think Magda's showing up, ready to rock. I think it's one of the few decks outside of our top little grouping that is like doing well this month and not what feels like an outlier, right? Kinnon's the other one, I guess, in that conversation, even though Kinnon's had a bad run lately, right? Which is just like, if there are decks that are top 16ing a bunch and top 4ing a bunch, like you're expecting that Magda is there at this point in the format. And it had a month that wasn't, because we've had a couple like terrible Magda months. We've had a couple amazing Magda months, like unbelievable Magda months.
This is like its first okay month.
Yeah, this is one of its mid months. And that's like, to me, the deck is, I mean, we did our whole numbers episode where we talked about this deck, right? Like it is a contender in the format. It is a tiered deck in the format, and it's putting up numbers that are decent, and it's not over really performing. It's also like, it was represented, I think, a good amount less than it normally is this month too, right? Like 30.
No, I mean, it is consistently every month sits right here at 7 and 8. Like for the last 4 months, it's sat right about here in this position on our meta game. So
right, exactly. So that's my whole thing with it. I think the deck is still solid. I think it's very powerful when people are playing less aggressively. It's a deck that can really help grind into the late game, and that's about it.
Yeah. And it's one of those decks too that like if people don't respect it, you can just, you know, completely clown on them because it is that powerful. And so I totally get that. I still just personally will forever have a lot of like trepidation putting a mono red deck into my top 10, just because it just feels so restrictive in what you're able to play. And it just feels like, of all the things that you could be doing, even if those other things maybe aren't performing as well, I believe in those more than I believe in Magda, if that makes sense, you know? So, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like this is a rehashed conversation at this point. The deck is like, the command zone makes up for any sort of lack the colors allow for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad deck. I was just like, this is where my bias comes in on why it's not in mine. My number 5 here, this is where I have Atraxa moving up 4 spots for me from last month. Again, like we said earlier, Atraxa with a really good overall win percentage of 289 is exactly what you want to see. Had a tournament win, had 3 top 4s with a 15% top 4 conversion percentage, which is pretty decent. A 26% top 16 conversion percentage, which is also right along the upper edge of average. which is nice. And so Atraxa just had a really good month. And in a month where there was a lot of consolidation at the top, seeing specific decks still come to the top of that, I think, is indicative of a healthy format for the most part. I think that if we were not seeing Kinnan or Yuriko or Atraxa win events in months like this, there would be cause for concern. But because we're still seeing these things and because they're still clearly viable, I think things are a little less doom and gloom than maybe I might feel like they are. But that's just some food for thought. But now let's get into these 4 really obviously good decks. Ian, what is your number 4?
Yeah, number 4, I have the newest addition to the sort of troop here, which is Nadu, Winged Wisdom. It's a powerful deck, turns out. I
can't believe people thought that this wasn't a real deck when it came out. It was just so obviously good.
Yeah, I agree. So I've seen multiple versions of the deck now. I will say So I sleeved up multiple versions as well.
Right.
Basically played like a creature heavier version that was like closer to the Turbo Landfall Storm. I haven't played full Turbo Landfall, but I played like a version that was like sort of like a hybrid of Sabretooth and Temujin's List. And then I played against Wounded Satellite in a tournament, and saw how consistent his like mid-range 30 pieces of interaction version of the deck was. And I played that version of the list, and my only loss for that event was to Wounded himself in the mirror match. So, the deck's pretty real.
It reminds me a lot of like if Rashmi had good win conditions. Is what it makes me think of, because it definitely, like, Wounded's version of the deck really reminds me a lot of Rashmi, and how that deck played, and so it's very interesting because I was like, oh yeah, this is back. I remember this play pattern.
Right, and it does the thing really well where it's like you can play the value Nadu and then sort of just like not be a problem for a really long time until you have 16 cards and then you're a problem, right? And it's just really good at doing that thing. The deck's really solid. I have nothing to say really bad about it right now. It's very commander reliant. One thing I will say is I talked to Wounded about this specifically, which was he had mentioned that like he was like, oh, I never go against Draneth with this deck, and I was like, half of my games I've played on Nadu have been against a Draneth Magistrate. And like that, the difference between those two scenarios is like when you have a Draneth in a pod and not, makes the deck feel a lot more or less fair. So folks, stop skimping on your Draneths. I know a lot of you have been cutting them from decks like Blue Farm. Stop
cutting them. That's your mid-range deck. Eat your fruits and vegetables, kids.
Draneth is a very powerful card. You don't realize how many things it stops until you really put the math together, until you get perfect information. But the card's insane. Keep playing it.
Eat your fruits and vegetables, kids.
I mean, legit not surprised to see Nadu up here. I mean, we can talk about the numbers here for a second, but like 80 tournament entries, right, which is a lot for a new deck, but 4 tournament wins, 13 top 4s, 26 top 16s. Like
4 tournament wins is nuts.
That's
Blue Farm numbers, baby.
32% conversion to top 16. Like I think the more impressive one for me is the 16% top 4 conversion.
The fact that it just like gets into top 4s pretty consistently is like
a pretty good amount, right?
It's a good indication. Of
so the deck's real. You got to believe in it. It's doing the thing. So
I mean, and this was the thing is I heard people last month when we released these stats who were just like, it's an outlier. People are excited. It was a good month, and I'm just like, you don't understand how many decks that people get psyched about when they first come out that we see on a monthly basis, right? And I think you and I see it more than anybody else because we do this analysis every month. And every month there is a new deck that pops onto the scene, and it's like everybody's really into it or something. and it does fine at best.
Yeah.
And Nadu was the exception to that rule. I think like Stella Lee is like the next best of the like popped onto the scene and did okay. But like that is just like the gulf between Nadu and Stella Lee is just like huge.
That's pretty real too. Yeah.
So like I that's kind of how I conceptualize it. I look at it and I'm just like, man, Nadu is just a whole head above everything else in the format right now. As far as it definitely feels like it has a bit of a brewer's advantage still too, because there are so many different ways of playing the deck that it does kind of feel like, because that hasn't congealed into a single play style yet, that it is getting a little bit of advantage from that.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's like brewer's advantage per se, but like the deck's also just like complicated, right?
Yeah.
That being said, there's like some very clear points of interaction that fizzle the storm, right? And people like hit the things that say equip 0. Like that really is it. Like,
don't let them have a Shuko.
Yeah.
Fun fact. Don't let them have a lightning grease. Fun fact. It's Umbral Mantle, another good one.
Yeah.
But yeah. My number 4 here, this is where I have my top 4 is completely unchanged from last month. I have Rogsai here at number 4. Rogsai had its best top 16 conversion percentage month maybe ever, with 37%. It did really good at getting people to top 16s. And it did also do pretty well at getting people to top 4s and to tournament wins. I still think that my entire like thing with it is I just, I don't like Grixis, or I don't like not having any backup plan in the command zone personally. And so I kind of rank it a little bit lower than like the other decks in my top 4, just because of the fact that like, so if you fizzle, you're like, man, I sure hope I get a Ristic Study. Or one of, one of those handful of cards. Sure. I guess now they got Polywog too to add to the core.
Don't think those decks are playing Polywog.
They're probably not, but like they could, right? It's just like they have more access to these advantage engines now.
Yeah.
But I still think that overall I like having the command zone have the advantage engine be a card advantage engine over a mana advantage engine personally. But Rogsai is doing really well. So Rogsai here at number 4.
Yeah, I mean, I think once again, like we have to factor in the fishbowl into this, right?
Fishbowl is like this like California and the West Coast is a very turbo heavy meta.
Sure, yeah. And I think that's part of it for sure, right? Like it is just a turbo heavy meta. But like let's look at the top 16 of that tournament, right? Because if you take out the words Rogsai and Blue Farm, boy, does it look different. You know what I mean? Like first place. Let's just go down. It goes Rogsai, Nadu, Tim Nakram, Rogsai, Nadu, Sisse, Tim Nakram, Rogsai, Sisse, Niv, Malcolm Bo, a bunch of random stuff, Tim Nakram, Rogsai.
Yeah.
And then like the decks that are going against it, stuff like Bergie. And like it is. Yeah, I think the deck is just represented very heavily in that metagame. As someone who's played a decent amount in the West Coast, like it does feel like that is a meta of people who play spells that are very proactive. And this is like not a criticism. It is just like a Rogsai.
It's just a fact, honestly. Yeah. I mean, it's just kind of reality, right?
Right. Rogsai will thrive in that environment because it is a very proactive metagame, right? People like to cast spells. They don't like to engage in the political side of the format as much, and that's okay, right? Like that's their ish. But it does mean that it's a lot of like cast spell, ask questions later type mentality, right? Which creates the situations in which a lot of folks are, going to be thriving with other decks that are also going fast, because it has been proven time and time and time again that there are decks. For example, this happens with stacks decks as well. The more stacks decks are represented in a pod, the better other stacks decks do. The more turbo decks are represented in the pod, the less people are interacting with the turbo decks, and the better the other turbo decks do.
Yep.
It is just math. Like it is just a proven fact, right? Now, don't get me wrong. Rogsai has had a great streak lately. I'm not trying to take away from that. This is also my number 3, if that wasn't clear.
Yeah.
Roxai is still one of the best decks in the format. We are arguing basically that like the fishbowl will always mathematically any event in that area, it happened with Surfside, it happened with fishbowl, any event in that area is going to make Roxai look better. Period.
Yep. I mean, when you look at that, most of the, so Roxai had 7 top 4s over the course of last month. 2 of them were from that event alone.
Yeah.
Right. And overall you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, let's see, 8 of the 26 top 16s were just from the fishbowl alone.
Yeah.
So
also it was played 78 times, right? That is not the average of how often we usually see that deck represented these months.
Yeah, we see it usually closer to 50.
Yeah.
So anyway, Roxai for you, number 3. Me, number 3. If you weren't here last month, it's Nadu. I took a big swing last month with Nadu. And I made full contact, baby. That was I said last month, I was like, I'm making a big swing, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And Nadu's just good. I don't know what to tell you guys. It is statistically an outlier. It is putting up Tim Necrom level numbers, which is not something I've ever said about a deck. Even when we were really high on Kinnan, putting it as the number 1 deck in the format, Kinnan wasn't even putting up numbers like this. Sisay would love to put up numbers like this. This is like the closest Sisay's ever been to a deck like this is this month. And this was just an incredibly good month. And it's 2 incredibly good months back to back for a brand new deck is huge, says a lot about the quality of the deck. I think my only fear is I am worried it will not be a long-term deck because I am a little concerned that it is going to get banned, not because of cEDH, but because of the horrible casual play patterns it creates. So unless the casual folks get their shit together and stop playing cards that really aren't for them, enjoy Nadu while you can. Is what I'm gonna say.
Yeah, I don't know if that phrasing is how I would like to put it, but yes, I understand your point. I think it is. Yeah, we're just at a point where it is tough to have that sort of dichotomy of the format, and I think like if Nadu gets banned for casual, I think like there will be even more of that discussion of like the reinvigoration of the people being like, oh, we got to split the format, which I can't stress enough is not the solution. But it is what it is, right? At this point, I think, we have a really powerful deck here in Nadu, and I hope that it doesn't get yoinked for the wrong reasons. That's all I can say about that.
And this was a conversation that I had with some of my more casual friends. Is I said it really reminds me of Paradox Engine a lot, because similar to how Paradox Engine kind of created these really like unhealthy, bad game mechanics for casual play, it really was great for cEDH. Like it really made a lot of good for the health of the format decks viable. And Nadu feels very similar, right? Where Nadu feels like it enables a lot of healthy decks in a very positive way, and is also a deck that adds a lot of different variety to what we're seeing overall in the metagame, and also doesn't take up like a million years to play IRL, which is nice.
The deck does take a while. Don't get me wrong,
it does,
but like it's the same as Karksaka in that way,
Yeah, but the nice thing is with it is that it has very clear win lines, which I think is something that maybe other.
I don't know that that's necessarily something I'd agree with.
Well, regardless, it's doing well enough to keep winning, a whole lot. So I like where Nadu's positioned. I'm worried about it long term being not here with us in like a year or two.
Is Nadu here in the room with us?
That's how it feels sometimes. But Nadu here at number 3. Number 2, Ian, you had Sisay here last month. What do you got here this month?
Oh, wow. In a grand shakeup, I have Sisay here this month.
Wow. I believe our top 2 are then the same.
Yeah, it's Sisay and Blue Farm. Sometimes I switch the 2 of them, but given how this month went, the proactivity of Blue Farm versus the uninteractability of Sisay is not as important, right? Yeah. We're seeing that Blue Farm is thriving in this environment. The numbers are still insanely close. The decks are both, what I would consider like the S tier of the format.
Yeah.
And so like it's not super, super crazy, but this is kind of where we're at, which is like these decks are doing fine, or probably, definitively more than fine. Sisay is just a deck that, and this is, I'm talking, I guess, more about traditional Sisay. Clam Chowder is also a whole other conversation, which is relevant because it ended up winning one of our 200 plus people events this month, right? Like it literally was a Clam Chowder win at the Colorado event, right? So like there's a lot of stuff to be said there about that, right? As well as Cat does their best impression of a cat.
No, there's a gnat that has been flying around my face for the last like 25 minutes. And I saw it land and I was trying to kill it because it's been annoying the hell out of me.
Damn, it really did be like that.
Yeah. I do agree with you though. The top and the top 2 decks in the format feel really obvious. And then I also feel like the next 2 decks also feel very like clear. I think the like top 4 decks, like you've got a very clear at tier S and a very clear tier A. And then after that, it's a lot of opinions and a lot of like,
I like the way you said that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I can give you statistical reasons for why these should be tier S, tier A. I can't really do that in a good substantive way for like the other decks in this top 10. And so like looking at it, and again, like, I don't think this is necessarily bad for the format. Again, we talked about some of the context of this month, why that really matters, why this isn't a huge negative. Now, in 2 months, if we see this pattern play out again, maybe we start calling the squad. But maybe we at least pick up the phone and get ready to dial 911. I don't know if it's time to dial 911 yet, but it's definitely, we should at least get the phone out to see how the situation develops. And this is, a little bit too early.
Do you want to clarify what that convoluted metaphor means?
I'm just saying it's not time to call the cops to freak out about what's going on. Like, I don't think we're in like, we need a ban quite yet. I think a ban would be super helpful. But I'm not quite ready to say the sky is falling quite yet.
What does that look like for you?
A ban?
Yeah.
I think that either a Bowmasters or a Dockside ban would go a long way in shaking the format up.
Yeah.
I cannot stress enough how much Bowmasters has just killed all the counterplay to the top decks. And Dockside has just consolidated what colors people want to play. And
I don't know about that though. That's one thing you and I really disagree on is the health of Dockside in this format. I think this top 4 turns into like a top 2 if Dockside goes.
I don't know that I agree with that, but I think you think about how much better Tivit gets when you don't have to deal with fucking Dockside, right? Like it's a huge thing where there's all of the decks, and I think I said this a while, like all of the decks that have good counterplay to these top end decks are punished so hard by Bowmasters and Dockside. And I think those two things just make it so like hard.
I think this might be where your preference as an Esper player is very much shining through.
Oh, for sure. But I mean, even like stacks decks in general, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to justify even playing Null Rod because you're one piece away. Your one piece is like, it's like a stick of tape holding back a dam from bursting at any given moment because of Dockside. Because all of your pieces that are, your stacks pieces are holding this together, and it's kind of all hinged on having a Null Rod or having a Stony Silence or having a Collector Roof. And that's like really flimsy. And so it's hard to justify it. And hard to justify playing these stack strategies, where if you take Dockside and Bowmasters out of that equation, I think you can make that argument a lot better, and you can feel a lot more comfortable playing Null Rod and Oof and things like that. And I think that does slow down the ROG size, and it does slow down the Tymna Kroms a considerable bit, because now they can't just rely on their artifact mana to get them through.
Yeah. Which is fair. I also just see all the decks that are at the top right now that just like literally become unplayable, right? Like Sisay becomes a deck that like, sure, it's technically playable, but not really. There's Magda is okay, but like definitely loses a piece. Kenrith becomes basically unplayable. Well, not basically, but it's pretty fucking bad. Rog Thras is literally unplayable at that point.
But think about how many decks become more playable because of that, right? Like you're losing
true.
What do you mean? What
decks are suffering so bad from Dockside's presence that they're just unplayable?
I mean, decks without red, like generally speaking, have a hard, like generally speaking, right now in this metagame, is a hard sell for most people to play a sans red deck almost entirely because of Dockside. And Dockside is one of those things that has consolidated the format around the Grixis like core. And that has led to this like really toxic like play environment in my opinion.
I just think that's way more developed to Bowmasters, which is the thing holding back the decks that have a very easy counterplay against it.
I mean, like, I agree, but I think
Dockside is playable again. Then like it doesn't matter what the fucking Dockside count is, right? Like that is
and but again, like I said both of them for a reason, right? Like I think both of them would go a long way in making the format a little bit more equitable. And you mentioned like Sisay and Kenrith become a lot worse. I'm not crying over 2 5-color decks being worse, if I'm being quite honest with you. I think that is a net positive for the format if we have 2 less 5-color pile decks.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's just there's a lot of people who really enjoy and play those decks a good amount. But
I mean, I get it.
Disagree. I think also just like Naya and Gruul and those colors just like become unplayable, period. Like
finally got it.
Huh?
I finally got the fucking Nat.
Oh, nice. Teamer too, right? Like Naya Gruul, Teamer just become like unplayable colors.
Yeah, I don't know that they become unplayable, but I think they definitely have to change what they rely on a lot.
I think they immediately start at the fringe definition and then
that's fair.
Kind of get this idea of like, maybe someday.
I don't know. I would like to see the format stop being like all just like centered around Dockside so heavily. And because I think Dockside has really warped the format in a very not great way. But that's just my opinion on it. So our top 2 there again is Sisay, Tymna Krom in that order. So overall, we talked about this month and we mentioned it a lot. It'll be interesting to see what August and what September look like, to see exactly what the what the open meta looks like and what the invitational meta looks like. And so I'm interested to see that August spread. I think August is safely going to be an outlier as far as like what is going to get played again. I think this 2-month period is going to be a bit of an outlier. September, I think, is going to be the real, like, what is getting played out there. And I think that will be when I start to worry if this continues into September.
Sure.
So what are your thoughts overall here as we kind of wrap things up?
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of thoughts, to be honest. I think there's a considerable amount that's going on in the format right now, and so like there's a lot that I'm sort of balancing thought wise. I think we have a pretty not fantastic outlook of July, and I am still optimistic that this is the outlier of that scenario, but like. It doesn't feel great that this is the conversation we're having. Like, I really hope the rest of the year doesn't look like this. That being said, I have attended several cEDH tournaments in the past month, and they haven't felt like hyper doom and gloom sort of energy. I'm just once again excited to almost get past the invitational, as much as like it's an honor to play and all of that stuff. I think just I'm ready to go back to playing decks that get me excited, trying new stuff in the format, because right now we're sort of just everyone's hyper tuning their deck that they want to bring to the invitational because there's maybe an unnecessary amount of like honor attached to a single 64 player tournament.
Right.
But that's how competitive games have worked for a long time.
Right.
That's this is where I feel like I differ from a lot of competitive players. For me, like one tournament in the most variance heavy format there is, like, it doesn't mean anything to me, right? Like, this is just another tournament I'm attending, right? It's going to have a lot of really good players, and I'm excited to play a game of cEDH with a lot of good players in it. Every round is going to feel like a top 16, and like that's really cool. You get to play good Magic, but like at the end of the day, I will care about doing my best and performing at my best, and I'm going to be putting that lens on my games no matter what event I'm at, right? Like yeah. And so I'm aware, once again, that makes me a bit of an outlier, but like I've never been a big fan of the like head up to the invitational and do the whole thing kind of mentality, because I feel like it often brings out the worst of people socially. Not to be a bummer there, but I'm hoping I'm wrong. Is basically that.
Yeah. Well, and we were the Mox Masters Invitational was an interesting experience, to say the least.
Yeah, that did color a bit of my perception for sure.
So we'll see exactly how that plays long term. But hopefully things will be super duper coolio, dude.
Can I get that one more time?
Super duper coolio, dude, is hopefully where things are going to be. But overall, if people who are going to be playing in the open like me want to get some coaching and want to get some pointers on how to improve their play, how can they do that? Do you know anybody who could help?
Yeah, boy, do I. No, I'm finally back from my crazy month of travel. July, I think.
You were barely home in July.
There was literally I think it was a 12 or 14 day period where I was home for 5 of the days and gone the rest. There was,
and somehow we managed to record
several
3
episodes
in there.
Yeah, there's actually, I'm pretty sure I did the math and I was home less than I was gone in July. So finally done with all that and very excited to be back in the saddle as far as coaching is concerned. For those who are interested in reaching out to me, currently sitting at the number 1 spot on the leaderboard of the Top Deck Invitational. All that kind of stuff. If you are interested in getting cEDH coaching, you can contact me at comedianmtg@gmail.com. You can find me at comedianmtg on Twitter and Instagram, or you can find me at comedian_mtg over on Discord. Message me at any of those places. I will send you my rates and all that stuff. It's been really cool seeing a lot of clients lately. It has gotten to the point where I have been so busy, I haven't even had time to publicly celebrate like half the people who've reached out to me, which is such a good thing. Like I love that I am so swamped that I can't even be excited for everyone. But like I've had so many people lately reach out to me, be like, "Hey, won my locals because of coaching, and this one piece of advice got me through it." Like all this kind of stuff, and it means the world to me when that shit happens, because I want nothing but my client success. So love what I do. Come find me. All this stuff.
Yeah. If you want to support us here, make sure to head over to patreon.com/the Mind Sculptors. again, huge shout out to everybody who, continues to support us over there. Also want to let y'all know that we are on our way to 10,000 subscribers. If everybody watching this video hit the subscribe button, we would hit that goal in no time. So if you are watching this still, please feel free to hit that subscribe button and help us hit that goal. We really appreciate it. And if you're watching this sometime in the future for some reason and we've already hit that goal, we're probably working on our next goal. So if you could go ahead and hit subscribe then too, that'd be great.
Also, if people want to leave down in the comments below what kind of celebration we can give for 10,000, we are open to ideas. I know we have talked about some t-shirt designs that we've looked at hiring. Those are, for a little peek behind the curtain, those are not lucrative for most creators. In fact, they're usually money negative, but we like you all and want you to have cool stuff that reps the brand. So let us know if there's stuff like that, if there's like, I don't know, mugs or some shit. Well, whatever y'all want to do, let us know in the comments below, and we can.
If people, you know what I'll say, if people want the playmat that we got commissioned like a few years ago, like if people want this, we can like eventually, like if enough people want them, we can put in an order. Yeah. But like it's one of those things where enough of you've got to want them in order to make it like worth doing, right? So that's
why I suggest clothes, because I feel like everyone's got a playmat. You know what I mean? Like,
I have a whole box underneath my desk that is just filled to the brim with playmats that I've accumulated over the years. But we are open to doing things that the fans like. So leave down in the comments what you want. And with that, I'm Cal.
I'm Ian.
Stay sculpty, everybody.
Ooh.